The jig is one of the most versatile bass fishing lures and one every fisherman should throw. However, I often get comments when I make jig fishing videos that you guys are fishing jigs and just can't seem to get bites. So in today's video, I'm gonna walk you through how to combat that problem and a jig setup that I started fishing with a while ago that helped me build confidence to catch a lot of bass with a jig. So stay tuned and let's get right into it. So to start, let's talk about what this little jig setup is, and then we'll go out on the water and show you how and where to fish it to build confidence with a jig. This is going to be different than my usual jig setup, so I'm going to use a different rod, reel, line setup. Even the bait's going to be a little bit different. The first thing you're going to notice is I'm actually going to have braided line on here. This is the one thing that is not going to be a necessity through the rest of this to be able to fish this jig. I tried this over the weekend just to see how it worked out. I was trying to use some 30-pound braid as a main line, and then I put an FG knot down here and tied that into 20-pound test fluorocarbon leader. Worked great. It was super sensitive in some wind, and I was able to feel bites and still get those fish out and have the abrasion resistant of the fluorocarbon. But if you're just getting into jig fishing, I used to fish this same jig on 15 to 20-pound test fluorocarbon, depending on how heavy your cover is. So pick whichever line you are more comfortable with, and that is going to catch you the most amount of fish. The reason that I say 15 to 20 pound, I used to fish this on 15 or 17-pound test, and you're probably thinking, wow, that's a really light line for a jig. This is a very small jig is what you're gonna notice, and that's gonna be the key to getting a lot of bites with this and learning how to get confident with it. So I have a Shimano SLX DC on here. That also not really a necessity. The biggest thing is the 7:1 gear ratio. You wanna be able to make a lot of flips, reel it back in, make more flips, and get your bait into a lot of pieces of cover. That's gonna get you the most amount of confidence. The more bites you get, the more confident you're gonna be. So the more casts you make, the more likely you're gonna get more bites on the jig. I also have this on the Icon Worm jig rod from Cashin right here. This is the 7.3 fast medium heavy. Again, not a super heavy rod. I could fish this on the 7.3 heavy. That's about as heavy as I would go with this. I would not even put this on the flipping rod. Whatever rod you already fish your worms, your Texas rigs, your chatterbaits, stuff like that on will work just fine for this jig because of the size of the jig and the hook that we put in this thing. Now let's talk about the little jig itself. This guy right here is one that I make myself. I have an entire box of them right here. I probably have about 100 of them in there, and I started making these jigs because I was struggling to get bit on a jig. So I fished with many of those larger flipping jigs on the market that have those 60 to 80 strand full silicone skirts, 5/0 hooks, and I wasn't getting many bites, and I couldn't figure it out, and I never got really any confidence with it. So I figured I'd downsize it just like a Texas rig and try and make it look like a little Texas rig craw that I could get a lot of bites on. So what I did is I poured my own jig. This is a 3/8 ounce Arky head here. I also have it in a 1/2 ounce, and I can make a 1/4 ounce as well. You can make whatever size you want. I put a medium wire weed guard in here so that it clears pretty easily. And the more important part is I have a 3/0 Gamakatsu hook in here. This is a very small hook, but it has enough stiffness that if I hook a fish, I'm not gonna bend it out. But it's also very sharp that I don't really need to set the hook very hard on these fish. And when it comes to the skirt, I have a hand-tied finesse cut skirt on here with maybe 60 strands at most. It's somewhere between 50 and 60 strands on here. So it's a very thin and small skirt on there. So these jigs are very small right out of the package. And then what I put on here to make it even smaller is a Berkley Powerbait meaty chunk. That's what I'm throwing on the back of this thing. But I do not just hook it onto the hook like you would a regular jig chunk. I actually thread it onto the hook, and it makes it even smaller of a profile. So that thing right there is maybe 2.5, 3 inches long. Super small, looks like your regular flipping craw that you'd put on a bait, a Texas rig, and it catches a lot of fish. If you guys would like to see me make this jig with 6th Sense and have it be my own signature series, the jig trailer combo, please leave a comment down below. If you blow this thing up and make a bunch of comments down below that you'd like to see me release this jig, I could probably work with 6th Sense and get to release this thing where you guys could just purchase it and not have to make your own. I've spent a lot of time designing this jig, and I've caught a lot of fish on it over the years, so it's not one that's available on the market. You could make your own if you have the molds, but if you'd like to see me release it as my own signature series, leave a comment down below. Now, when it comes to colors and rigging one of these up, let's run through it real fast on what I'm doing to set this bait up. Colors, I have a whole bunch in here. I got green pumpkin and black and blue are my two main ones. I have a bunch of others in here with some accent colors from peanut butter and jelly, which is like a brown and purple. I got green pumpkin orange, all different kinds of little accent colors that I play around with given the day. But for the most part, green pumpkin and black and blue is gonna get that job done. So going with that theme, I have 3 different trailers on here. If I have semi-stained water where I'm gonna go with that black and blue, but it's not filthy, I'm gonna use a black chunk, or I could throw that on the green pumpkin or something like that, mix that up straight black, no flake in there, anything like that. The second one I have, for the dirtiest water that you have out there, you can see we're gonna go fish some dirty water today. That's the one I have on there. Black and blue skirt with a sapphire blue chunk on there, like absolutely flamboyant color, but it gets bites when that water's dirty. And then the third color is going to be a green pumpkin of some type. This one's green pumpkin sapphire. That's all they had available when I bought some of these, but any type of green pumpkin is going to work just fine. So we're gonna take one of our green pumpkin chunks here, and we're gonna take one of our green pumpkin jigs. And like I said, what you don't wanna do is come in here and fold this hook point down, or the weed guard down like this, and just hook your chunk right through like that. One, that's gonna cause a little bit of a different action because of the way that it's hooked up on there. And 2, it makes that bait a lot bigger and it has the bulk in a weird place. What I like to do to make it look more like a little Texas rig craw that I would fish is I fold my weed guard down, and on the center of this chunk, there's gonna be a hole that you can put your bait in. So I'm gonna take the hook, I'm gonna go straight down the middle, and I'm gonna come out right between the claws right there. And when I do that, I will then run it all the way up, and I have a hook keeper on here. Sometimes I put a dot of super glue on there if I really want it to stay on and I'm catching a lot of fish. But for the most part, I just punch it right up on there. And now you have a very compact flipping jig that could look like a little bluegill, a little crawfish, anything that those bass want to eat. And it is about the same size as a Texas rig and goes in all the same places, and you can build a ton of confidence with a jig. So let's head out on the water, show you how and where to fish this thing, and catch us some bass along the way. All right, so now that we talked about what this jig setup is, let's go ahead and get to fishing this thing and see if we can catch us a couple fish, build some confidence with a jig. So we are fishing a lake that has vegetation, bushes, it has some laydowns in it, it has a lot of stuff, a lot of targets that you can cast to. The big thing with this jig is basically fish this thing wherever you'd fish Texas rig. This jig is not much bigger than your standard Texas rig craw that you would be fishing. It's just all in one compact package. So wherever you would throw your Texas rig, that's where you're gonna wanna throw this jig, and just keep fishing it. And that's gonna give you that confidence as you catch fish with it, knowing that you can catch fish with this over a Texas rig sometimes. And there'll be days that they don't want this bait, they'll want the Texas rig instead. But usually when I'm fishing around heavier wood cover like this, I like the jig better because it will come through. You won't have your hook pop out of the bait and end up getting stuck in the cover. So we're going to basically just continue to pitch around. This jig's very light and compact. You can cast it like I just did at different pieces of cover, or there's a piece like right here, you can physically just like flip this bait into those pieces of cover and try and get them to bite. So I can just take this, flip it right in here and get them to bite it. But there's no other way to build confidence in a bait other than get to fishing it. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. Like you can see, we have a whole mountain of trees right in front of us here. We're gonna go through and flip all these trees and see if we can catch us some fish. As we get bites, that will build our confidence in this jig, and you'll be catching more fish on a jig in no time. So let's get to fishing it. We'll show you a little bit about how to retrieve this thing too, because that is a very important part of fishing a jig. So what I'm going to do is flip this into the cover. I'm gonna let it fall on completely slack line. We're fishing pretty shallow, so it's only gonna take a second or two to get down to the bottom. I'll lift up and see if there's something on there. There's not. I'll hop it a couple times, see if anything bites it. Nothing picked it up. And then I'll go ahead and reel it right back in and make another flip or cast or whatever I'm gonna do with it. You can drag this on the bottom like you would a Texas rig. You can hop it like you would a Texas rig. You can really fish this however you want to get a bunch of bites. Got that one. Get out of there. There we go. Deep in that cover, catching them on the jig. You can see this little jig, even with that 3/0 hook, will stick them right in the roof of the mouth there. Garrett's hung up in the tree. He thinks he had a bite, which he probably did. A lot of these fish have been schooled up. They're probably all in this wood. It could take you forever to fish through here, but that's a nice one right there. We got him out of that little triangle of wood right there. He had a little home in there, kind of hopped it in place, and he came over and grabbed it. So let's get him back and we'll get back to fishing. There's a guy with a dog. Got that one. Did you see him swim that all the way out here? Dude was just holding on to it. That was crazy. Definitely can catch some nice ones on the jig too. Even this little mini jig, you can see, stuck him right in the roof of the mouth there. We're gonna get us some more, but hopefully we're gonna get us some more. That's the little jig right there, getting it done. Another one. You can see, again, no matter how big or small, these fish can still get this jig. You can build yourself some confidence with the jig when you're not getting bites fishing other types of jigs. This is always my favorite, just to catch some fish and get bites. I've caught them all over the country on this jig, and this dude wanted all of it. There we go, got him out. I've caught him everywhere from lakes, rivers, ponds, all kinds of places with that jig. That's only like a 1 pounder. He ate it just fine. See, buddy?
I always don't even set the hook, and it's like, again.
Get out of there. I lost her.
You lost it?
Yep. Nope, she's still on there. You won't believe this, but she is still on there. Oh my gosh, we got her. That's why you fish the braid to leader too. So that leader, I can fish that lighter braid and I can work my bait through there and try and get those fish to come up and bite it and feel what they're doing. I was able to feel that fish bite it down in all that wood and not set the hook on pieces of wood. And then that fluorocarbon leader is abrasion resistant. I can set the hook and get that fish out once it gets buried in there. And you get a hook really good in them with this bait. So if you're struggling with catching fish on a jig, give this one a try. Leave a comment down below if you'd want to see me do a collaboration with 6th Sense and maybe make this my own little signature series jig through them. And if you want to catch some bigger fish on a jig once you get some confidence, check this video out right here for my favorite jig once I started catching little ones and get the confidence going with this. That's the jig I like to go to next. So hit the subscribe button. See you, buddy.